A new graph we're going to talk about is a histogram. And a histogram looks a lot like a bar graph, but there's one main difference. On a bar graph, you're taking like a category like, let's say you're doing maybe colors, maybe people's favorite colors. And at the bottom you list like red, green, yellow, blue, whatever. And the bar would go up as high as how many people liked that color. That would be a bar graph. A histogram is going to look like a bar graph, but the categories are going to be different ranges of amounts. So like for instance, 0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, those types of ranges or those types of amounts. And I'll have an example coming up here that I think will help you understand what I'm talking about. Ultimately, it's going to be your decision as far as what you want the amounts to be at the bottom, the categories, the amounts you want it to be. But we'll look at an example here and see what we can come up with. We can do this a couple of different ways. So the data that I've got, and let's see if we can get this up here. This data is states in the United States and how many public four-year colleges they have. And I cut the list off at Louisiana just because I couldn't fit the rest on here. So this isn't all the states obviously, but it's some of them. So we're just going to work with the ones that we have listed here. And if you notice Iowa on here, Iowa's got the 3 public institutions, four-year institutions. It's got University of Iowa, Iowa State, and UNI. So really, compared to some of these other states, not a lot of four-year public institutions. But what I want to do is I want to make a histogram of the states and how many four-year colleges they have. So I'm going to start with just your typical bar graph look here. We've got the x-axis and we've got the y-axis. Now in a normal bar graph, I would probably list the states down here, and then like for instance I'd put Alabama here and I would draw the bar 14 high. That's not what we're doing here. We're making categories of how many four-year institutions there are. So what I have to first kind of do is look at those numbers and decide what do I want to go by on the bottom here? What do I want my categories to look at? And I'm looking on here, and Delaware only has 2 public institutions, Delaware State. Iowa has 3, so those are kind of the smaller numbers. And we have to get all the way up to California, who has 35. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go by 5s the first time we do this. So one of my categories is going to be 0 to 5 public institution, four-year public colleges. Then I'm going to have 6 to 10, 11 to 15, 16 to 20. I have to slide this guy over a little bit. Yep, there we go. 21 to 25, 26 to 30, and then 31 to 35. That covers everybody, which is what we want. So now I need to figure out how many go in each one of these categories. And this is something where if you want to make kind of like what you would call a tally chart or a frequency chart, just to see how many fit into each category, you can do that. I'm just going to put the little marks under here just so I know. So I'm just going to go down the list here. Alabama has 14 public four-year colleges, so the mark would go right here because 14 is from 11 to 15. Alaska's got 3. Arizona's got 4. Arkansas's got 11. California 35. 12. 9. 2. Couple of 27, so those would both be in there. Couple of 4s. 12, 15. 12, 15. 3 double 8s, and Louisiana with a 17, with 17 institutions. Okay. So now, off to the side, I'm going to make my numbers as far as how many are in each one of these categories. Now, the biggest number I have is 6. There's 6 states that have from 0 to 5. So I don't need to go very high on the side right here because there's not very many in each one of these categories. So I could just probably go by ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Because 6 is the highest one. If I had more, I'd just keep going by ones, but that's really all I have. So 0 to 5 public institutions, 4 years. I will draw my bar like this, because there are 5 states, sorry, it's not 5, it's 6, 6 states that have from 0 to 5 4-year colleges, public schools. Okay, if I go here, there are 3 states that have between 6 and 10 of those 4-year universities. If I go here, there are 5 states that have between 11 and 15 of those public institutions. There's only 1 state that has between 16 and 20. There's no states that have 21 to 25. There's 2 states that have 26 to 30. And there's just one, which is California, that had from 31 to 35 4-year public institutions. So there's my histogram. What I can tell from this, I can kind of see from my data that more states have fewer colleges than a bunch of those 4-year colleges. That's something that you can just tell by organizing this data into a graph that looks like this. Now, you could have done this a few different ways. I did categories of 0 to 5, 6 to 10. I went by 5s. Okay? I could do the exact same graph, and instead of making the categories go by 5s, I can make the categories go by 10s, and it's just going to look a little bit different. So it would be 0 to 10 would be a category, 11 to 20 would be a category, 21 to 30 would be a category, and then 30 to, I can't fit that on there, but 30 to 40 would be a category. And then I could make my bar graph again. So now, if you think about the categories from 0 to 10, I'm going to have all of these. So that'd be 6 plus 3. So that's 9 that's going to fit into that category. From 11 to 20, that's 6 that's going to fit into that category. From 21 to 30, still 2. And from 31 to 35, still 1. So now we can do our bar graph. And since I have some bigger numbers, I might want to change what I go by. If I have to get up to 9 and I don't have that much space, I might want to go by 2s. So maybe I go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So now if I'm drawing this bar, there are 9 states that have from 0 to 10 4-year public colleges. So I can do the 9 right there. It'd be between the 8 and the 10. Let's see here. 6 states have between 11 and 20. Two states have between 21 to 30. And then finally, only 1 state has between 30 and 40. So now, if you take a look at this again, we use the exact same information, but we just made it a little bit different. Now when I take a look at this, I can also tell that, yeah, quite a few states have fewer 4-year colleges, or we could say less than 20, than compared to how many have more than 20. So ultimately, you get to decide what you're going by on the bottom here, what you want these categories to be. But you know, you don't, like for this, you wouldn't want to have 2 categories because that wouldn't probably show very much. I would say you'd want to have at least, I mean, 4 is probably probably the smallest I would go. You know, you want to fit as many categories as you can, you know, while still making it look neat and while still being able to fit it on there. So that's going to kind of be your decision to play with as we work with these histograms.